On today's episode of the DeRaud-Messinger Show, Dylan, the Lone Star Showdown. 13 years in the making, we finally get this game. Number 3, Texas, and number 20, Texas A&M. Of course, we're previewing and predicting this game on behalf of HornSports.com. Check us out at HornSports.com for all the latest in Texas news. Now, Dylan, the basic game info. People haven't heard it in a while, so I need to make sure everyone's going to the right location. The game is Saturday, the 30th of November at 6:30 p.m. Central Time at Kyle Field in College Station. It's been a while. Televised on ABC, the Longhorns are currently favored by 5 points. Now, Dylan, I know we got the mobile setup going. Just talk about maybe how much of a crime it is that we haven't seen this matchup in 13 years. I mean, we've aged. We were kids last time they played. Now it's coming back. How do you feel?
It's malpractice, Devon. I also like to think that we're still kids, right? At heart, at least. I don't feel like I'm that old, even though I'm about to turn 25 here in a bit. So yeah, Devon. I
Age
mean,
reveal on this
yeah,
broadcast.
age reveal. 13 years ago, I don't even know like what we were doing at that point. I just remember that this game was so significant to me, capping off a Thanksgiving night. Just the importance of it, because you'd come off these crappy Cowboys and Lions games, and Texas A&M would be there to save you. And I just
Or not.
missed that nightcap. I just missed the nightcap of these uniform matchups, and I'm so excited for this, Devon, just as an outside viewer. But it really did, even if I'm not affiliated with Texas and going there as a student, I grew up not liking A&M just in general. So I'm here for it at all times.
Well, Dylan, I think the rivalry between Texas and Texas A&M in some ways is more palpable than the one with Oklahoma because Texas and Oklahoma, there's at least a mutual respect there.
Yes.
In the A&M and Texas rivalry, it is a family rivalry where you are beating up on the younger brother and the older brother. Of course, there's a dynamic there, and hoping you get away with it. Well, that rivalry is back. Now, Dylan, get us into that Texas A&M scouting report of their Aggie offense and how you feel about them so far.
Yes. Speaking of 13 years ago, Devon, offensive coordinator, our boy, Colin Klein, former quarterback for
A-State
Kansas State.
legend.
Yeah. He's now the offensive coordinator, like I said, for A&M, and you see bits and pieces of that in the way that he calls the game. I mean, there's a big reason they've got freshman redshirt QB Marcel Reed now spearheading the offense with the dynamic of just a dual threat quarterback that can make plays with his legs. Big reason why I took the starting job from Connor Wigman. And a big point of emphasis, Devin, that I want to highlight for A&M's offense, 208.4 rush yards, 17th in the country, right? And they also do have 2.4 rush touchdowns per game, 21st in the country. So running the ball is going to be A&M's bread and butter in this matchup, or at least something they're going to want to really lean on. Problem with that, Devin, they're without Le'Veon Moss, who's, I think, one of my favorite running backs to watch in college football. Suffered a knee injury against South Carolina, so he's out for the year. They've got Amari Daniels stepping in. He had 27 carries on 90 yards with a touchdown against Auburn, but not as effective or efficient as Moss has been this year. So that's going to be a key focus to watch in this game when it comes to just impact players, Devin. But they've also got two big receivers in Noah Thomas, who stands at 6'6", and Ja'Day Walker at 6'4", who Marcel Reed is going to be really looking to get the ball to in this matchup and test the secondary of the Longhorns.
Dylan, you're talking about buttering bread. I mean, come on, no Thanksgiving pun in there. You gotta break something.
Gravy on the stuffing, Devin. It's gravy on the stuffing that we're doing.
Man,
That even
that's yet again a family setup here. On defense, Dylan, we're talking about familiar names. Torian York, the sophomore linebacker, out of Temple, Texas, yet again was under-recruited out of high school and has just been a star for the Aggies, leading their defense. He has 65 tackles so far this year. But to give a little overview of the defense before we really get into it, 38th in the country in scoring defense, Dylan, 79th in passing, 41st in rushing defense. So leaning a little more towards the defensive front in terms of the strength of this team. However, 58th overall in team sacks. So it's pretty solid, but also nothing incredible. But 24th in the country in team interceptions created. So they are among the better teams in terms of creating those turnovers. And guys, A&M, they got a defense, Dylan. Even for Jimbo, who of course did not make it to this glorious year in time where we've got a rivalry renewed. Even when he was here, you knew that this would be the year, Dylan, where the talent lines up for the Aggies, and Mike Elko has been able to use that talent well. But can they cap off this year with the win, which would keep their title hopes alive, Dylan? I know title hopes at number 20 seems far-fetched, but they're not totally out of it just yet. With the win here, something might happen. But anyway, going back to York, leads the team with tackles, but he's got a couple running mates, especially Dylan. We're going to talk about that defensive front because they like eating their Thanksgiving. They probably not only eat one meal, they probably eat at least three. And that starts with Nick Scorton. Dylan, 5 sacks on the year, but you got to list out the height and weight. 6'4", 285 pounds. But he's paired with a 6'4" running mate yet again in Cassius Howell, 245 pounds, 3 sacks. And I got one more height and weight for you guys. Shamar Turner out of DeSoto, 6'4", 300 pounds, as 2 sacks on the board as well. So Dylan, just that defensive front, yet again, not missing meals. Going to be tough to run against if you're the Longhorns. And for the Longhorns, that's just been a inconsistent field of play. However, Trey Wisner, Quintravian, last game, did his thing. Jadon Blue, when he's holding and taking care of the football, Dylan, he's able to make people miss, but that's definitely going to be a matchup to watch, the Texas running game versus the front. And then lastly, just some other key players just to mention. Scooby Williams at linebacker, defensive back Dalton Brooks out of Shiner, Dylan. Long time no see there. And then another defensive back, Marcus Ratcliffe, one of those guys that has been creating turnovers for the Aggies. So stacked defense. And as Dylan was discussing, the offense definitely has changed its ways from the beginning parts of this year under Wigman, has been seeing more improvement in multiple areas. So this Aggies team, in several ways, of course, Auburn loss does not help them, Dylan, but it's shaping up more so than it looked like early this year. Now, Dylan, X factors.
Yeah.
I feel like you can really go anywhere here and be correct because there's a lot of different things that this game will hinge on. Who do you have as being really the deciding person or people?
Yeah, so I don't think we've talked about him enough this season, Devin, but I want to highlight this player in big part to a game that I think is almost a litmus test or like something that Texas is going to want to emulate, and that's South Carolina versus A&M and what South Carolina was able to do against A&M, and that's with their front seven, which is something that the defensive line for South Carolina does very well. And Barron Sorrell is somebody that stands out to me as the freak of nature that he is with his size and speed. I'm saying that he is the extra factor because I already know what Anthony Hill is going to be able to do. We've talked about him. You almost keying in on the fact that like he is already a big part of this team. Sorrell is the extra piece in the sense of setting that edge alongside Trey Moore and Colin Simmons against Marcel Reed. Because if you can make Reed a pocket passer, that severely limits A&M and what they're able to do offensively. And a big way that A&M won against LSU was behind Le'Veon Moss and Marcel Reed being able to run all over that team. If Sorrell sticks to his assignment, sets that outside leverage, basically keeps Reed in there, it's going to allow Hill to feast on the inside and, again, make Reed have to beat Texas with his arm. And if things don't start to look good there, then you might get some, Wigman sightings, and then that momentum gets lost for A&M. So I think Sorrell's with his play, he could really, really take over this matchup and again decide where this goes.
Yeah, Dylan, while the defensive front for Texas entering this year, it was hard to imagine it getting any better after a tremendous year the previous season with Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. In a weird way, they have gotten better. It hasn't necessarily been the nose tackle position, but more so the edge rushers, like you were saying. Sorrell, Anthony Hill has a part in that. Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke, you name them. They have been able to get the quarterback on the ground, which they weren't able to do last year. And I think really you've seen that effect just played tremendous, I guess, just bonuses to the whole defense still. And the defensive backs are now not having to guard people for 10 seconds, and now the DBs look amazing.
Which helps.
So Sorrell, just to pat you on the back, definitely going to be a key player for this matchup here. Now, Dylan, it might be copping out, but I got to play into the storyline a little bit. It's been 13 years in the making, and if you're going to have to pick an X factor, you're going to have to pick a guy that was a Longhorn through and through as a kid. And Dylan, I don't even remember or know if he remembers the last time the matchup happened. I'm sure he does, but was much younger then, of course. And that's Quinn Ewers, the lifelong
Who went to Ohio State his first year. But yes, go on, Devon, as a Texas guy through and through.
He is, but I know Dylan likes to hate on Ohio State as a Michigan fan. It's only natural. But Ewers, yet again, being a Texas guy through and through, this is going to be a big matchup for him. Sam Ehlinger didn't get to have this matchup, Dylan, which I know a lot of the Longhorns, such as Mookie Tapp, have mentioned. In part, Ewers is going to try to get his Sam Ehlinger on and carry a team here because, Dylan, quite honestly, if A&M wants to have a chance here, they're going to have to make Ewers try to be mobile, and that's going to happen with just the defensive front that the Aggies have. Even with the great Longhorn O-line, Ewers is going to have to stay clean in the pocket, but be able to move on an ankle that Dylan is maybe a little shaken up after last week's game. It will be an interesting thing to see. But of course, for Ewers as an X factor, you got to stay clean in the pocket. You're going to have to be able to be mobile when needed, but Dylan, stay clear of the interceptions. And he's going to have to throw his fair share of touchdowns. I don't know if we're going to see a super high scoring game here just because the rivalry. I think the nerves are up, but he's going to have to, yet again, keep that TD to interception ratio positive. Anything
And
else?
that's what, well, I'm about to say, and that's what worries me, that health for Ewers. We saw that during Kentucky. He just doesn't look as much as himself. And again, it worries me for this game because A&M is going to be sending the house at him, and that's going to be the way that they win this game too, is taking away that passing attack and limiting what Ewers is able to do. And in all honesty, his comfort level, because when Ewers is himself, he feels good in the pocket, trusts his protection and where his receivers will be. He's a night and day different player, right?
Yeah.
And if A&M's able to muck that up and you start to see signs of that injured ankle not looking like himself health wise, Texas is going to be in for a long night. And again, it changes how this game will be played.
We saw that against Michigan, as you're saying, even against a good defensive front, just the trust that he had in his O-line and knowing when to step up and knowing that his guys had his back. It seemed like Dylan, maybe the trust in the O-line, not that they've been bad, but maybe in part has just gone down a little bit after suffering a couple of injuries this season. But he's going to have to be able to trust him as much as he can do. And I don't know, yet again, there's a lot of Thanksgiving lovers on that Texas A&M line that will make it tough for Ewers. But Dylan, just talking about the difficulty in this matchup, what's your danger level here? I think you and me, I feel like have the same one. I'm not sure here, but yet again, I'll let you roll first.
Well, this is what I love so much about this matchup, because it's like you throw out the record books here and everything that goes into it in a big part because you're going into Kyle Field, into College Station. Again, a rivalry game in a nightcap that hasn't been played in 13 years. In every scenario, this is always going to be, for me, danger level higher than 8, right? I've got a 9 in this just because of how big of an importance the 12th man for A&M is going to play in this matchup, because this is such a momentum team. What A&M is, if they are able to pin their ears back defensively, they see Ewers licking his wounds and they're able to get some push up front offensively, and Reed's able to make some spark plays with his legs, it becomes a whole different matchup, which is why for Texas, what I like in this matchup and why I don't have it at a 10 is because of what travels well for Texas. The front seven that I mentioned earlier with Barron Sorrell and Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons, right, and Trey Moore, and Ethan Burke, all of those guys, they are going to be able to stifle that momentum, right? Because it's not so much of a position like quarterback and wide receivers, where it just really does come down to the flow of the offense and what it's able to do. And then offensively, you look at the offensive line, those guys, they're going to be able to get a lot of that push up front, or at least they're going to be a deciding factor in this game against the defensive line of A&M. That's absolute monsters as well, right? So if the running game is able to generate something, which also travels a bit better for offenses just in general and road games. That's what I like about Texas here. And again, if they can, they have the advantage talent wise. They play a clean game, which you're probably going to harp on, Devon, in terms of turnovers and penalties. It's going to be able to stifle a lot of that momentum when it comes to A&M's players and ultimately just the fans.
Oh yeah. No, Dylan, I mean, what's the fire extinguisher on the school wall or wall of building? You got to break the glass. Well, for this danger level, Dylan, I'm breaking that glass. I'm going straight 10 in terms of danger level. I know, and Dylan, as you know, I don't like doing the 10 here, but this game, I put in my notes. I put this game is for parentheses almost all of the marbles because for Texas, if you lose this game, destiny was in your hands before, but now it is out of your hands, and you are praying that the college football playoff committee is nice to you. Now, I think Texas, Dylan, just given the resume, has still a solid shot, even if they lose this game, to get in the playoff, but it's no guarantee. And for A&M, they have to win this game if they want to have any shot because they have to win against Texas and then win against Georgia in the SEC championship game to secure a playoff berth. So for this, both teams have a lot at stake. And as Dylan said, I hope the foundation for Kyle Field, Dylan, is solid because I know the stands will be rocking. You might feel a little shift in the rows if you're at the game. So make sure you maybe picked the safest row or just
Or a
situate
seatbelt. Bring
yourself.
a seatbelt too.
Seatbelt. Maybe situate yourself on the concrete versus the stands because probably a little sturdier. But Texas A&M hates Texas. We saw that via Elko's Freudian slip in the press conference. They've been thinking about this game for a long time. It was on the cover of the Dave Campbell's Texas football, I believe, fall season, Dylan, with it was Ewers versus Wigman. Now there's a late swap there and putting in Reed at quarterback for A&M, which of course at this point has been for a long time in the season. But everything's at stake. Dylan, if A&M were to have several position groups that they would need to be good to beat Texas, they have that yet again on that defensive front and just the secondary in general to force Texas to potentially make some errors. Now we'll see how that all comes to play. But I got the danger level yet again at a 10. Score prediction, Dylan, you're going with a 9 in danger level. How are you feeling here about both teams?
Yeah, like I said, it's a momentum game. A&M's coming off of that quadruple overtime loss to Auburn. And I don't know. I feel like that's going to impact it a bit as well, Devin, just because now there is almost like what are they playing for, right? They have nothing to lose, just in the sense of how
Well, they don't have
difficult
anything
it's
to lose.
well, the thing is though, I think if Elko plays it right, he's got these guys thinking there's nothing else other than winning this game. Right? Because beating Texas and then beating Georgia, that's a lot to ask. You only focus on one thing at a time. Rather with Auburn, there was still like, oh, we lose to Texas. Maybe there's this one chance that we get over a Big Ten team, right? In some sort of sense, the 11 or 12 spot. This is completely different, and it's going to turn up the intensity for this game. I've got Texas winning this game 23-17 in big part with this offensive line and the running game. I think that's what's going to win Texas rather than Ewers' performance on the field due to injuries. It's gonna have to come down to the guys around him and defensively in order to win this game. And Anthony Hill is going to have a big game tracking down Reed in this matchup, which is why I only have A&M scoring 17 in this matchup.
Yeah, Dylan, against Kentucky, that final really knockout drive for the Longhorns. If you remember, guys, did not feature Ewers at all. It was a 15 play. Let's just run up the middle, see if they can stop us drive, with Wisner ultimately capping off the drive with a touchdown rush against A&M. Dylan, as you're saying, if Texas really wants to be in the driver's seat here, that is what you're wanting to lean on in terms of not relying on Ewers to make all the plays, because in the way that football is complementary, Dylan, you lean on the running game, the passing game will open up and it will be easier for Ewers, which yet again sounds ironic, but that's just how football works. And I think all football fans know that. I've got Texas winning this one, Dylan, but we're talking about vibe checks. I don't know if this game passes the vibe check. So I'm saying I've got Texas winning, but definitely, as indicated by my danger level, definitely could go the other way. I've got Texas winning 27-24. Again, A&M has the talent at the right positions to make this one a tricky game for Texas to handle. Some games, Dylan, just are more difficult to win than others, just given the strengths and weaknesses of teams. A&M matches up well here. Anthony Hill, you mentioned him earlier, Dylan. I believe in some press conferences on the Aggie side, I want to say someone was not being disrespectful, but was underselling him a little bit. And then after Hill was left off of the, I think, linebacker of the
Yeah.
year
I
award.
mean, that's insane. Are you kidding me? On
Yeah.
a top three team as well, and a focal point of a defense.
Oh, and he wasn't a top four finalist. I mean, and a certain somebody up north, Dylan, in Oklahoma was a finalist. So Hill's
Yeah.
got a chip on his shoulder, and yet again, won the Aggies. Wasn't being disrespectful, but maybe not giving him enough of his flowers in the press conference. But that's what the game is for. So Hill's going to be angry as well. But Ewers has showed that he can handle adversity in these road environments when it gets rowdy. Yet again, his health is a question mark. But Dylan, if Texas wants any chance, the running game is going to have to do something, and Ewers going to have to stay clean, but also, of course, throw for at least a pair of touchdowns if Texas wants to win this one. So I've got Texas winning 27-24. Dylan, it's gonna be a good game. I think everyone's excited. I believe ticket prices for this matchup are the highest they've ever been for a regular season game in football, period.
Yeah, breaking news. I will not be at this game. I just want to put that up, breaking news.
That's
Due
our
to
rent
unforeseen
payment.
circumstances and prices, I might not be attending this matchup.
I'm glad to know that that's the cause there. Yeah, if you guys have extra dollars, we're always accepting donations for the fund. But more importantly than our score prediction, we got a close one here. Who do you have? Do you have A&M winning at home, or do you have Texas? Let us know down below. Don't forget to check us out at hornsports.com. And as always, have a great rest of your day.